Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I'm your host Ajra Sati and joining me is my wonderful co-host who happens to be Fahim Bangesh. Assalamu alaikum Fahim. How are you doing on this amazing Friday morning in Islamabad?
Walaikum assalam. I'm doing very well and brilliant, if you ask.
Thank
And these days I'm quite happy in a way that when I wake up in the morning, I'm usually, what used to happen was that I used to be lethargic, I used to feel sleepy, I used to be, okay, I don't want to get up. But these days, I don't know whether it's the food that I'm having or perhaps some physical activity. It's made some changes somewhere in the wiring here, somewhere in the muscles. I feel very fresh, and it's the first time, that I actually got to understand what people mean by, it makes you fresh, it makes you more energetic, exercise and gets rid of anxiety, etc., etc. So perhaps it does work because I am experiencing it. What about you, Hadra?
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for asking me, and I think weather is amazing, so is my health, and it depends a lot upon your external environment too, right? Although it does comes from your inner self, but external environment or external factors do trigger you. But Fahim, having said so, I was watching a drama, and that drama was I think broadcasted in early 2000s, and I was observing the architecture of that drama, and it was such an amazing thing to observe because I could see the transition into the modern architecture versus the one that was present in the old ages. And if you go to villages, you will observe that architecture, and it shows that there are very high roofs, and then there are lots of windows that open up to your sehen or angan, or I don't know what you call it in English, but the angan, the aspect of the angan represented how it's a very communitarian sort of a culture, how people are well connected, their families living together,
absolutely.
right?
That courtyard or angan that you're referring to, that's something so important. We have that in the area where I belong to, where we still have houses over there just like that, and the community is so strong. People come, people go. The guest culture is so strong. It creates lots of strong bonds between people, and that is what we lack in the main urban centers of our country. And I think even if you see the architecture of the houses today which are being built, they lack that. And I think that's something really unfortunate and something really sad.
Exactly, and I think one of the advantages of having a courtyard or angan or sehen, if you may say so, is that they used to absorb a lot of rain, right? So whenever there was a rain, there was an angan out there, there was a lawn, there was a grass out there, it could absorb it. But now in the modern architecture, it has been covered by all concrete, right? So the concrete jungles that are propping up, and that is why we see that whenever there is a rain, intense rain, across the big cities in South Asia, we see that this phenomena of flooding or urban flooding
yes.
And one of the reason is because of the concrete jungles that have propped up, and concrete cannot absorb the rain, the waterfall. So to further roll it and to further dissect the concept of the climate change and how it is linked to the monsoon season, and not just the gloom and doom, obviously we want to discuss the opportunities. We are very glad that we have been joined by someone who has been environmentalist. She is doing her PhD in this particular field. She is exploring a lot of new trends. Without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by Ms. Maryam Shabir. Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Maryam, and thank you so much for joining us.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much.
Right. So, Ms. Maryam, you are doing your PhD and you are exploring the arena of climate change. It's a very magnanimous sort of an arena. What is your research interest, and what are some of the newest trends in this research which you would like to share with us?
Well, my research is at very much preliminary stage because it's my first year of PhD, but it's primarily focused on how climate change is causing people to migrate and to displace. There are different terminologies being used in literature, but both have similar meaning, that people do migrate forcefully because of climate change. For example, in 2022 flood in Pakistan, 33 million people migrated, within Pakistan to other provinces, to other cities, villages to, from rural to urban areas. And I'm kind of, I want to see that how these kind of trends contribute towards conflict, before or after or during this displacement caused by climate change. But what other research is simultaneously going on related to this changing trends, and of course this monsoon and everything, is that with every 1 degree rise in temperature, now our atmosphere holds 7% moisturizer, which causes unprecedented rainfall, be it in urban areas or in rural areas, and our glaciers are melting because of fossil fuel consumption, not only within Pakistan, but of course by the developed world as well, which is contributing and exacerbating, lots of. But there are lots of problems with governance structure in Pakistan too. For example, if you see whenever there's like flooding in northern areas, you would see hotels. This hospitality sector built literally on rivers and on river streams and these bodies, and every time those and someone in institutions sitting in government institutions are approving those hospitality sectors, those hotels every time. And I think it's high time to not let private businesses to build on risky areas, which are like because of flooding or sea level rise when we move towards, Karachi side. And of course, you were just talking about this concrete jungle. One factor is that, of course, it's because of concrete jungle. It's because of increasing private housing societies and removal of, forest covers and trees. But another factor is that, of course, the 7% moisture with every 1 degree rise in temperature is contributing, a lot. And when there is like episode of heat waves happens, and then after the unprecedented rainfall, the kind of soil even in jungles or in forest areas, that is not really ready to absorb that kind of water. So you see in even northern areas, you see flooding as a result of that too.
So, as we were talking, like you said, there is lack of urban planning, and even there are landslidings. And even right now, as we speak, there are many, many trees being cut in the north of Pakistan. There is still, I mean, more talks need to be had, not just on television, but also here and there on different platforms, because people need to realize the importance of that. Because slowly and gradually, I think if we lose all the forest cover, where would we be? Because I was reading somewhere the other day that Venezuela has become the first country which has lost all the glaciers. So is Pakistan, or perhaps the people of Pakistan, are we waiting for that to happen to Pakistan as well?
Well, when it comes to glaciers in Pakistan, it does not depend on Pakistan, but rest of the world too, because of their carbon emissions. Pakistan is also facing this sort of impact, and that's why glaciers are melting over there too. But of course, our domestic role should also be there. And like you were rightly mentioning, that people are cutting trees. One aspect is, of course, the timber mafia is very active, and there is no forest guards. There's not enough forest guards in our forests to protect those forests. But secondly, the communities living near those areas, they are highly dependent on the wood, to generate heat and to cook their meals on daily basis. And honestly speaking, I don't blame those communities, because they don't have power, they don't have gas to cook their meal, they have to cut those trees and cook their meals. They don't have any other option. I think that's where the government has to step in to help those communities to provide gas so that they can cook their meal, for example, and of course the hospitality sector, again, I'm coming back to that. In those areas, we don't see that they have like gas over there even in winter. So they also burn lots of wood logs, so that businesses are also involved in illegal cutting of the forest. So again, it of course comes back to, it's a very complicated issue, and it comes back to, again, our institutions, and of course the governance structures, and of course providing basic facilities to the communities so that they can think about the environment, but not to cut them, but also simultaneously, plant more trees as well and grow more trees as well, if they have to like depend for their what we call in Urdu is indhan, because they don't have alternative, we have to provide them.
Mariam, you're quite right when you say that the rest of the world is also responsible when we talk about climate change. But I beg to differ just a bit here, because Pakistan is moving towards dense urbanization. And I was reading somewhere that even the concrete or the cement, when it dries up, it emits a lot of heat. And even that, I mean, contributes a lot into global warming. And Pakistan is one of the vulnerable countries. I mean, can we do anything about that?
Of course, there are, of course, successful examples which we see in even in our neighboring countries. For example, we can learn from China. They have shifted, they have done a lot related to environment as well. Of course, they are still using fossil fuels, but they are doing better with environment. So one is, of course, vertical housing. Instead of, horizontal, we should go for vertical housing. And, every there should be a rule in which, every country, every household should plant a certain number of trees in their lounge or in their on their decks. It's very easy to plant small trees which can play significant role in microclimate regulation. For example, one state in India, Kerala, there is a rule that every household has to minimum plant one tree per house, and I think that's a doable and very wonderful. So one is, of course, making a law or policy to plant trees per house. That should be a rule everywhere in Pakistan. And secondly, vertical housing is the way forward. And third, of course, we need to move towards those materials which exist, in different parts of the world. And researchers have done enough job, to move towards alternatives. How we can construct those such houses which are like which can absorb more heat, or which are like more environment friendly, which doesn't contribute much to the pollution and more heat and more global warming to the environment. So we really need to rethink how we want to build our houses, because the conventional methods are not going to work with changing climate, because it's becoming hotter and hotter with every day.
So since you are reading and you are studying climate-induced migration, and I'm pretty sure the element of dispossession must be there in those studies and in those research that you are conducting, let us now examine the communities within the Pakistan who are affected because of the climate change and who are constantly migrating. So, for example, one community that props up in my mind is the nomads, or the Khana Badosh as we term them, right? So they are not living in one particular area. They are constantly moving by the changing temperature, and they mostly have their cattle, they're grazing them, and they live in their tents. So what sort of impact would the climate-induced migration have on their existence? Because in documenting their existence, there are already problems, because Nadra has a problem documenting their address, because they're constantly moving in the country from north till the south, right? So when we talk about the dispossession, when we talk about the climate-induced migration and the conflict that is going to take place as we are envisioning, how do you think that will impact their existence or their community?
I think they are already facing the brunt of climate change, because their pattern of mobility within Pakistan are changing. Earlier they used to not travel frequently. Only nomads, the people who are constant on the move, used to migrate from one place to another place, because of to avail resources, because they mainly depend on livestock. And of course they go for the search of water, because their livestock is dependent on water as well. But now, because of changing climate, for example, droughts in Tharparkar and sea level rise in Karachi and parts of Sindh, and cutting of the mangrove forest in Karachi, and lots of other parts of Pakistan, now people are frequently migrating because of these changing climate extremes. For example, when I conducted research with Sustainable Development Policy Institute based in Islamabad in 2019, there were like certain type of migration happening within communities. One was like permanent migration because of the, droughts and flooding in Punjab and Tharparko going on, and the other one was circular migration, in which people migrate for a certain period of time towards Karachi and Balochistan areas, of course, because of drought and increasing temperature and heat waves. And when the temperature settles a little bit, they go back to their original place and they do farming. But in that process, their livestock, their loss is at risk, and lots of women, their health is always at risk, and they lose their, miscarriages, and they lose their babies, they lose their livestock, because it's a very painful process, and there's no as such infrastructure in Pakistan to manage migration, be it, happening in northern areas, or in Balochistan, or in Karachi, or in Tharpakar areas, or in southern Punjab, so the with changing temperature and extreme temperature events, the migration patterns are changing. So are their vulnerabilities. For example, when these people migrate from rural to urban areas, they don't have the right kind of skill set, to really earn money. So they end up being exploited by the industry and cheap laborers, and they because they have to meet end-to-end needs. So there are lots of problems associated to that. They don't have access to healthcare infrastructure either. So of course the conventional nomads, they I don't think so. There is like a kind of proper documentation with Nadra. I'm not aware of. But with these communities who are involved in permanent migration or circular migration, I think Nadra do have documentation of those peoples. But with changing climate and climate extremes, their vulnerabilities have been increased. And of course, when these people
And
migrate
then,
from their
Mayim,
place of origin
obviously,
to new place,
Mayim,
sorry, yeah.
when we talk about the marginalized communities, and obviously you're documenting how the social safety factors can be undermined when we are looking at these communities. But now also let's discuss. I would like to call it the ugly phase of the modernization or urbanization, which is that across the world you will find that there is a race to create modern cities in which we have a very flashy sort of a skyscrapers. There are malls that are propping up. Those malls are very flashy. They are highly tiled, highly clean. But in this entire race, there is another underprivileged community, the marginalized communities that are living within those ghettos, right? So, for example, street hawkers, for example, the beggars who are begging on the maybe on in the streets, in the corners, on the traffic signals. Those people, they are marginalized, and they are bearing the brunt of this intense urbanization. And we have seen how there's this thinking, elitist thinking within the policy making circle, and especially in a neighboring country, when there was a visit of some high professional or high official there, those beggars or those hawkers were asked to leave the city,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you are excluding an important part and a ghettoized part of the city away from that. So instead of having a more inclusive conversation regarding the diversity, regarding accepting it, you do not want them to be part of your modern city, right? So if you analyze them at the intersection of climate change, how do you analyze that? I mean, aren't they more vulnerable because of the twin factors of urbanization and the climate change?
When it comes to like marginalized communities in Pakistan, there are like several marginalized communities. One is that in flood-prone areas and in drought-prone areas in Pakistan, they are mainly dependent on agriculture and livestock. So that community is separate, of course. But the one you're talking about, the beggars community, I think it's very much debatable because that segment of society is also being exploited, or that, so to say, profession is also being exploited by many, and many people take advantage of that because it's an easy way of, earning money. But of course, there are lots of people who I've seen myself, those people migrated from areas of Sindh and other parts of Pakistan, and they don't have, I was talking about just right kind of skill sets, so they don't have right kind of skill set. So they end up either in like cheap labor or cheap industries, or they end up in begging sector. So I think there is need to provide more job opportunities, or for example, they need to be trained back then. So for example, when I was talking about Tharpaka, those kind of ladies and men too, they have like traditional embroidery skill set. So if government or any other institution can teach them how to get access to internet, how to sell their products online, I think they cannot be victim of this market exploitation, and they can sell their products online, and they can earn money, and they won't choose begging as a profession. So when it comes to modernization, I think we need to go back to our roots, the way you were talking about in the beginning of your segment, how we need to go back to our roots, and we need to learn from our indigenous knowledge. We don't really need like lots of new knowledge. With changing climate, of course, we need little bit of new knowledge as well. But there are lots of indigenous values and indigenous culture which needs to be revived again in Pakistan, and that would solve lots of climate crisis in Pakistan.
Very important message. Thank you so much, Mariam, for putting it across. No matter how much modern a man can become, there always a wisdom there in the local knowledge out there, and we need to adopt to that, because modernity has shown us that how unsustainable is that pursuit of getting modernized or of greedily, running after that.
And Hajra, the indigenous cultures of not just Pakistan or the subcontinent, the entire world, wherever modernization has taken place, it has had its repercussions. But now our team has prepared a very lovely report on the rainfalls in Pakistan. Let's take a look at that before we return.
Rain is continuing in various cities of the country, including Islamabad, Rawalpindi and Murree, while the forecast is partly cloudy in Karachi and different parts of the Punjab province. It has been raining for several days in tourist places. Large number of tourists were confined to hotels. The National Emergency Operations Center of National Disaster Management Authority has anticipated more rains, wind and thunder showers with isolated heavy rains in various regions of country until August 18th. According to the forecast, more rain was expected in catchment areas of Neelam Jehlam rivers in Azad Kashmir, while district Barakan, Sibi, Bolan, Harnai, Jafarabad, Kulu, Musa Khail, Nasirabad, Sherani and Job Abulistan, and the Mirpur Khas division, Dadu, Jacobabad, Khairpur, Larkana, Mityari and Sakar of Sindh province. The rainfall may cause flooding in various urban areas and increase water flow in streams and nalas. Hilly areas may experience landslides, mud flows and flash flooding. Another new series of monsoon rains is likely to start in most districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province from tomorrow. According to the Provincial Disaster Management Authority, more monsoon winds will enter the upper and central region of the province from the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, due to which heavy rains with strong winds and thunder will hit all the districts of the province until 18th August. The public is advised to remain vigilant and follow instructions from the local authorities. NDMA advises the public to stay informed and download Pak NDMA Disaster Alert mobile app for timely alerts and closely monitor the weather reports. Abdulhai Aryan, PT World News, Islamabad.
Well, may Pakistan stay safe in these difficult times.
That's very true, and that was the visual representation of how the monsoon is going to affect it. And please plan your travels accordingly, and especially to the tourists who are visiting all the mountainous areas. Be careful of the landsliding and plan your trips accordingly, and that too for the farmers, because they're sowing and they're reaping, and how their crops are being impacted by the rainfall. And Met Department has also forecasted and predicted rainfall in Islamabad from Thursday till Sunday. So make sure that you plan your trips accordingly and be careful about the intense rain flooding that might happen. So we are going on a short break, and after we come back, we have an interesting segment lined up. Don't go anywhere. Good morning.
Islamabad Capital Territory, a modern planned city that is well maintained and well organized. Islamabad is Pakistan's clean, calm, and green capital. Founded in the 1960s, it attracts people from all over Pakistan. Located on the Potohar Plateau in the northeastern part of the country, between Rawalpindi district and the Margla Hills National Park to the north, Faisal Mosque, the largest mosque in South Asia, Margla Hills National Park, Dominico, Pakistan Monument, Rawal Lake, Simli Lake, and Fatima Jinnah Park are among the tourist attractions in the territory. It is ranked as the second most beautiful capital city in the world.
Welcome back to World This Morning with Hajra Sati and Fahim Bangish. As we told you earlier, we are going to have an interesting discussion, and we have with us in the studios Mr. Wahab, and Wahab Saab has been in our program before as well. He's a motivational speaker, and today we're going to talk about the role of youth in the society. But first of all, Wahab Saab, assalamu alaikum and good morning.
Walaikum Assalam. Good morning to you as well, and thanks for inviting me as usual.
And it's always a pleasure having Wahab Saab in our studio. So Wahab
Absolutely.
Saab, we constantly hear as a representative of the young people criticism from our parents, our grandparents' generation that you are the generation like you're constantly on a mobile phone. How do you think that has changed the dynamics of the younger people? I mean, with respect to awareness, with respect to the conversations that we're having on the human rights, how are we different from a previous generation, and how do you see a gap between that?
Ajad, first, thanks for inviting me and thanks for putting this question. You see, I will just give you an example which might explain the case. Like almost 30 years ago, if something would happen in Peshawar or Karachi,
Right.
next day, newspaper would carry some other story,
True.
right? Everything used to be filtered. News would be what certain
Group
part
of
of
individuals,
controllers
yes.
would like to convey. And people would come to know about that incident almost a week after.
True.
If they would receive some eyewitnesses,
Yes.
only, I mean, they could tell what happened. But nowadays what happens? Every second, every minute, people are getting footage
That's
through mobile phones.
That's true.
You see, every person is a producer and actor
True.
at this age.
True.
Every person knows basically, or if he or she doesn't know, at least he films something
True.
and it goes viral. There are people, I mean, who are more educated nowadays. Our youth, our youth is almost more than 66% of our population. And we, as elders, do not really try to accept this fact. Today, youth is more sharper
True.
as compared to 30 years ago.
That's true.
They are very good negotiators. You see, they can solve various issues in jiffy. If I would pick up a mobile, if I'm having a problem, if I take 10 to 15 minutes, my son does the same thing in not 10 to 15 seconds, but in a minute or 2 minutes. Similarly, wherever you go, whatever, if you're driving, my younger son, not younger, elder one, when he was 20 during COVID, he had to drop the younger at a university in Lahore, and there was no public transport available. He leaves 6 o'clock, rather 5 o'clock in the morning, goes to Lahore to drop him at the university, and reaches back Islamabad at 6. I was wondering, I was thinking, I could have never done this sort of feat when I was young. But at the same time, I was also admitting that now we as elders also have become a bit bolder. Perhaps when I was young, if I wanted to do something similar, my father would be having thousands types of fears, right? He perhaps he won't allow me.
More
But now,
compliant generation.
but now we are allowing this generation to do what they want to do. We are giving them liberty, we are giving them freedom, we are
Autonomy.
realizing their potential. At our times, like 30 years ago, our parents were a bit afraid of if we, allow this sort of expedition, something bad might happen. Nowadays, people have become more fearless, and they have realized that life is gotten once. If youth has potential, let them do what they want. I can tell you almost 30 years ago, I won't name the province, people had no tradition of marrying their daughters to outsiders. They would family their daughters only within clans, not even beyond that particular area, particular clan. Within 30 years, now they are trying to marry their daughters to the guys from other provinces,
Yes.
because they have realized it will give room to more cultural mingling. It would allow the next generation to grow from various angles. It will open new horizons for them.
And make it more diverse. Yes.
Diversity, So now they are ready to accept unity in diversity. Earlier, they had a sort of, misconception that unity meant cling to your own language, culture, traditions, area.
Tribes.
But they really now want to try, they try to do things which are quite new to them.
Right.
And-
And now that you spoke, I'm sorry, I'm
Sure,
cutting
sure,
you.
continue, please.
Now, so you spoke about marriages, right? Another problem that we do see in today's world, especially, I'm talking about Pakistan here, we do say that the youth has a lot of potential, but shouldn't we always keep in mind that there are a lot of youth who either has had education only till the primary level or has had no education at all? What are they contributing to the society, being not educated at all, or perhaps being just moderately literate, I would say, without any particular skill or knowledge or any idea about the outside world or what the outside world is all about, what are the demands of today's world, basically? So isn't it more like a burden on the society rather than producing responsible citizens? We're merely producing burdens.
Those who are educated and those who are at the helm of affairs, they have to be blamed more for this,
Right.
what you're pointing out. If people are less educated or undereducated, it's not their fault. It's either the fault of their parents, fault of society, fault of the planners, fault of the government. A government has to be like a mother who has to take care of all the children simultaneously with same rights. If a child has access to a university in Islamabad, the child in Balochistan, in far-flung areas of Balochistan, must have access to a university as well. If I can approach a very good hospital in capital, right, within few minutes, if God forbid, if I am affected by a malady, why not the same right is given to persons living in far-flung areas of Punjab or Sindh or Balochistan or KPK? So basically, this is our fault. We don't have, ideal situation of literacy, but even then, our majority of youth nowadays, they are graduating from universities. We have thousands of doctors in Pakistan. We have thousands of fresh graduates. But what is happening? The underprivileged class is still underprivileged. The problem is we are not good planners. We do not send doctors to rural areas with reasonable good facilities.
Yeah.
We do not sort of motivate our youth, the privileged youth, to make underprivileged privileged. For example, if we do introduce schemes where we pinpoint, we register all those undereducated, and we make it compulsory for our educated class to make them educated at the same time. Nowadays, we have a skilled university in Islamabad as well.
Yeah.
So these type of universities have to be spread throughout Pakistan, where we really work on these underskilled force, undereducated force, where we make them get not only technical education but other education as well.
So now that you speak about that, earlier also you spoke about that educational facility, a university facility should also be had in people from, let's say, the Balochistan province, people in the far-flung areas. Now, just one example that I have had personal experience with. I know somebody who was in a university which has a huge name but is in a lesser developed city. I would not like to name it.
Right.
He was talking to me and he was like, had we had teachers like you people did, our teachers would come in, just spend the time in the classroom and really not care about whether or not the child has learnt anything. We had a guest here a few programs back, and he was talking a similar thing. I had a conversation with him. He was from perhaps slums, and he had an interaction with someone from the same university that I'm referring to, and he said that the pupils over there, the students over there, did not meet the basic requirements of the students that we have at LUMS even to enter the university. So how would you comment on that? Because there are universities in the lesser developed cities, but yet, sadly, unfortunately, the level, the quality is not the same.
Let me appreciate your question. Let me tell you why. It's a matter of priorities. I mean, though the example may not fit very well, but just for the sake of example, if we could have very effective system of intelligence in bordering areas, in extremely underdeveloped areas, outskirts, why cannot we have accountability measures in similar universities? I will
Right.
just give you an example. Like almost, it was late 19s, I was posted out of Islamabad, and my last place of posting was Karachi, where I was teaching in an institute in the afternoon sessions. And you will be surprised, our principal, he was having like almost every room getting monitored, and we all would appear in his screen where he was sitting.
I see.
He was crippled with one leg, but he was keeping a watch over 20 teachers at the same time. One day I said something in the class which generated some discussion, and when I met him next day, he said, yesterday you had chosen a good topic and I'm happy that everyone was involved. And I was surprised, I was shocked. How could he know? Then I realized, no, he's monitoring each one of us. And if any one of us would commit a blunder, he would call, not the same day, maybe next day, and say, please, please try to avoid such things. You are in sort of this culture where people have Google, have all these facilities. So at least Google, if you're saying something, if you're passing a comment, if you're giving an information, so please double check. So we can apply the same everywhere, even in outskirts. For example, if we have picked up good quality teachers, now the only issue is their behavior, classroom behavior, which is not proper, which is not competitive, which is not professional. So I mean, they can be monitored. There could be a very good. The vice chancellor. What do they do in universities? They have got only administrative work. So they shouldn't feel shame if, for productive purposes, they are keeping an eye over the teachers. What they're doing? Either they're only killing their time. They're using their devices. I would say, there are certain universities in capital where teachers have no liberty to take their mobile phones to the classroom. They have to get them deposited, right? It might hamper some areas, but on the whole, we can adopt measures, especially in the areas you're talking about, where we arrange refresher courses for teachers, we engage them, we plan with them. A vice chancellor is supposed to plan with his whole team what you're going to do, what are your targets. At the same time, for example, in many private institutions, if I'm a teacher, there are people who do pay a surprise visit and ask my opinion, how does he teach? Does he explain everything? Is he a good teacher? Does he accept questions? Does he feel angry when you put a sort of question which he doesn't like? So they always try to get feedback. This feedback, there is no negative purpose. The only purpose is just to make the teacher more effective in classroom.
Right.
True.
Right? If we
They
adopt the
should
same,
feel that there is accountability.
if there is same, because this accountability has to be introduced in every field. Even you will be surprised that one of my friends, he is a doctor in UK. He wrote medicine. He wrote an antibiotic without having evidence in front of him, or in the written system, he simply put antibiotic without giving the reasons why he had introduced antibiotic.
Right.
Within an hour, director sitting somewhere 1,000 kilometers away, he rang him. Excuse me, you wrote antibiotic. I could see in the system, but you didn't record the reasons why you had. Did the patient had ample reasons to suggest him antibiotic? Hey, do you know what is happening? There is doctor, I won't name, and there was a far-flung area again in Pakistan. The doctor had written simultaneously 4 antibiotics to a patient.
My goodness.
Because he might be a pseudo doctor, right? But he's having a clinic. Somebody asked him why 4. He said, let's try. At least one of them would work.
Oh my God.
This is happening everywhere. Even the biggest hospitals in Pakistan, they are killing patients. There's no accountability. A lady fell in her kitchen just few days ago in capital, and she got her, some upper part of limb, injured. She was taken to this a good surgeon of the biggest hospital, and he said it needs half an hour surgery, and I would just put a rod and plates. When she went for second opinion, he said 2 tablets a day, 5 times exercise, you will be best after 5 days, and she improved. The other guy, he had recommended 1 million rupees surgery with drastic change, rod in the whole arm. Can you imagine? And this is happening here. Why? There's no accountability. So everyone, lawyers need accountability, doctors need, teachers need accountability, whatever section of life is, So, and youth, we were talking about youth. We are having a policy that we do not empower youth. we are not ready to train youth. We have to change our policy. We have to bring drastic changes in our policy. This country, this world belongs to young people, you know.
Yeah.
If today we put them at the helm of affairs, you will see drastic, better, positive changes within next few years.
Because they understand the world
Exactly.
better than.
Exactly.
That's
They're
why
sharp.
They're very sharp, and that is why we always strive at PTV World to bring the young voices at the screen, because like Wahab Sahab mentioned, that they are representative of the new culture, of the new era, of a new world, a more globalized world. And obviously when we talk about the younger people, they have more creativity, they have more energy, and they're able to channelize that, and that too with the very exciting tools, the artificial intelligence and the gadgets that they have, which might not have the young older generation might not have the privilege to deal. So thank you so much, Wahab Sahab, for coming
You're most
to our
welcome.
show.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for having this wonderful conversation. And until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.